almost didn't invite anyone to our wedding because of that silly little burden story. You know that story? You probably do. Maybe you have one too. It's pretty common. Let me tell you how this burden story ruins your life. This is just one example. Okay, two. I got two. I almost didn't invite my own family to our wedding because I was like, well, you know, it's 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, and my sister has 2 kids, you know, and in France it's 3 o'clock, and then my friends in LA, that's like 7 or 6 a.m. Like, I just can't, you know, I can't ask people to do that. Okay, for starters, my sister would have been devastated, absolutely devastated, if I had not invited her to the Zoom wedding. This, by the time, was during July 2020. The borders were going to be closed for almost a whole nother year. Borders had been closed, right? So none of them could come to the wedding. But I was like, well, I don't know, like, you get to, you know, who wants to come to a Zoom? Like, that's boring. They're not really there. Blah, blah, blah. All the people. But especially my sister. She's one of the most important people in my life. She was upset that she couldn't be there. So for me to even have this thought like, well, I don't know. Ridiculous. But that was how it was everything. The only reason any people got to come to the wedding is because my BFF Liz, who knows me so well, I talk about her all the time. She's my soulmate. She is, has always set me straight whenever my little crazy voice is like, nah, blah, 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 blah. And I told her, and then one of my good friends from childhood who lives in Germany, very close to her, she could come, right? Because you could come between countries by then, but you couldn't. The border was closed to the U.S. I forget all the things, but like no one from the U.S. could come, but her and her husband could come. And she was like, wanted to come. And I was like, no, like, and I hurt her feeling. She literally was like, I'm so confused. And Liz was like, you better let her come. You need someone there from your childhood, from your family's not even going to be there. It's a big day, Melanie. And I was like, I'll be fine. She literally shook some sense into me. So then I was like, yeah, actually you should come. I hope you come. And she was like, good. Cause I was like, why did this Melanie not want me to come? And it's about the boarding. I was like, oh, you know, she has kids. Like, I mean, I just have to find an Airbnb and get on a train and maybe, you know, I literally will create all these problems for other people that they don't have because I just don't want to, I don't want to put it out, you know, and this doesn't mean that I haven't actually been a burden to people in my life. Of course I have. By that, I mean, when I was really self-destructive, I wore people out. Like when I'm not taking care of myself and when I am in addiction or any of that stuff, I can be a burden to people, right? And they can love me and they can help me, but at a certain point, they have to take care of themselves. And I talk about that a lot. Like, do not let an addict pull you down because you actually a lot of times they get worse by you enabling them. And sometimes they even die because people keep trying to help and it's not helpful, right? So, just that little nuance, wanted to add that. With everybody. I was like, well, and then Liz was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Everyone from your life that you can think of, and I have lived in so many states, so many countries, done so many random jobs, you know, I had people from New Mexico. I mean, I lived there, I lived in California, I lived in my truck for many years, I lived in Washington State, I lived in Wyoming, I lived in New York City, I taught English I didn't live there long, but I taught English in Spain. I taught English in Chile. I worked on a strawberry farm in Argentina. I grew up in Tennessee. Oh, and I lived in the Northeast for a little bit, like above New York. And I went to college in Montana. Like, I have people from so many different chapters of my life. And she was like, give me their addresses. Just tell me. So, like, Liz coordinated the whole Zoom. Boom, boom, boom. Every time I thought of someone, I was like, oh, but every person that I could think of. And I still miss people, but I was like, ah, you know? And she was like, Melanie, most people aren't as codependent as you. And if they can't do something, they won't. Okay? And I was like, oh, right. Saying no to things and not overextending yourself. You know, that seems to be That seems to come a little bit easier to other people. Or someone asked me to come, I am still paying off debt from all the weddings I went to that I really should not have gone to because I couldn't afford it. Out of state, out of town weddings cost me a fortune. And I thought those people would be mad at me if I didn't go. And they're like, no, we didn't expect you to come. We're happy you're here. And I was like, God. So she just said, let people stop. This is why we can be very disrespectful. Stop infantilizing people and stop trying to control people. Assuming that you know what's best for them. They're adults. They know what's best for them. And some of them might actually be flattered and touched that you thought of them, even though you haven't talked to them in forever because, you know, you live in different states or whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So I was just bam, bam, bam. Do you know how many people came to the Zoom? I mean, not even at the wedding itself. The wedding itself, it was small because it was, you know, in the beginning of, or right after like huge confinement. And we had I think it was like 30 people, masks. It was a very, very intimate event, right? July. 200 people showed up. Some people wore like bouquets or like the little corsages or whatever that people wear to prom. Some people got all dressed up, even people in LA. It was like 6 a.m. and they got all dressed up. Some people came in their pajamas, totally fine. But all these people were there. I could not believe that they cared enough to come, even though they probably were like, oh my God, she invited me. Do you see what I'm saying? All the people that I invited and some people that I forgot to invite, because if you're new here, I have lived like a lot of lives because I didn't date men. I didn't let men hijack my life. That's how I've had so many experiences and so many random jobs and so many adventures, is because a man did not derail my life. That's pretty much whenever people ask, how did you do all this? I didn't date. I didn't let a man make me center him. So I had so many people who have meant a lot to me. And so, like, you know, even one of my old bosses in the film industry in New York, I thought of her and I was like, God, I loved her. She literally gave me a role model. She changed the way, she was like the first woman that I worked for where I was like, I want to be just like her. I want to be that confident, that good, a leader like her in the film industry. She was respected by everybody. She didn't let anyone walk all over her, but she was still very empathetic and very, like, she did that perfect balance of being very thoughtful and empathetic, but never letting anyone push her around and never letting anyone tell her that they knew better than her when they didn't. She was one of the best bosses I've ever had. And so I even sent her a little, she sent me money. She sent me a gift. A lot of people did. That's how we paid to go meet the family a year later. I was like, hey, meet my husband, Mom. You know, like the wedding money that we got is what paid for us to go back to the US. And he got to meet all these people in my life, right? And she sent me a gift and she was there. And I left her a message being like, I just want you to know, like, and I just left her a long message being like, I don't know if you understand how important you were to me. I don't think you understand. You changed my life. You gave me the role model. She's child free. She's married, but child free. And I didn't even know you could do that. I kind of felt like if you got married, if you ever had a man in your life who was good to you, who you loved, then you just like had to do the thing. You know, I forgot that was an option. And she was like, no, I don't want kids. We have a great relationship. I love my job. I love my job. You know, I was like, oh, cool. Okay. It's like I had like something to look up to, right? Someone to look up. She's like 10 or a little, maybe a few years older. She was awesome, funny, great. So I basically was just like told her basically how much she wrote me back and was like, I have been waiting my whole life to hear that from somebody. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. I have wanted my whole life to feel like I had an impact like that on somebody. Thank you so much for telling me. And I was like, oh, wow. And I almost didn't invite her to the wedding. You see what I'm saying? That burden story will ruin your life. It will ruin all the good things in your life. You gotta work on the burden story. It'll cut you off from love. It'll also sabotage your career and other things. Because the reason why I had to deal with this, or had it resurfaced this week, because I launched my Patreon. And my coach, my creative coach, Lauren, who I will link in her info. She's amazing. And if you want to see us talking, I did a live with her on, what was that? Wednesday, and it's under the lives on the in my YouTube, where we talk about just creativity, all kinds of cool stuff. But I came up with, she was 3 months ago, she was trying to get me to launch this. And I was like, yeah, but, and I always I knew I should. But that burden story, I was like, but I don't want people to feel like they have to join. The same way I don't want people to feel like they have to come to the wedding. People say no all the time to weddings. People say no all the time to things if they can't go. If they can't afford it, if they can't find childcare, if they're sick. I mean, sometimes they just don't want to. Nobody has to do anything they don't want to do. Just suggesting it, just creating it, just offering it doesn't mean other people are going to feel obligated the way I feel obligated to do stuff I don't want to do all the time. And this first came up when I became a comedian, because I had to invite people to shows. If you have shows and no one shows up, first of all, it sucks. It's such a terrible experience to do a show and people don't show up. Like it just sets the tone for the whole night, just to be like, wow, nobody wanted this. And then it puts a lot of pressure on the audience members to laugh, right? So I had to promote my show. And unlike everyone else that I knew in comedy, who would literally blast their invitation to all their friends on Facebook. But I was like, I can't do that because some of them don't even live here. They live, in Spain and Australia and Chile and all over the place. They're not going to come. But to go through 4,000 people and figure out who lives in New York City right now, it would be crazy, right? So they just blast it to everybody. But I still get annoyed when I get so many invitations from people who I've literally never met. But that's just like what people do. You have to do that. You have to fill the seats. And you know what? People don't come if they can't come. They don't come if they don't want to come. Right? But I mean, I have been dealing with this for so long. This just like, I'm afraid to even mention it. Because I assume that other people have no boundaries the way I always had no boundaries. I'm better now. Look at this shirt, by the way. Look at this. You're a unicorn. I love this shirt so much. I lost it. I couldn't find it. So I just wanted to share this with you. And so this whole thing with Patreon, it was like, Lauren was like, because I'm also very concerned about people's finances. Although I can barely afford to do this because I just barely am covering rent and expenses right now, right? And I work so hard. And because TikTok has shadow banned me, and because I'm like so at the mercy of the algorithm, that my livelihood is so fragile, and I have no access to all the people who love my stuff, because if the algorithm just decides not to put it out there, then they don't get to see stuff that they even maybe want to see because of this other algorithm stuff. And so I want to keep doing this, and people who follow me want me to keep doing this, I hope, unless you're hate watching me, which, then I don't really care what you think. And so she was like, nobody has to join. And there's also a free tier so they can at least stay in contact with you. So if if you can blast things out to them, and then certain content is for certain tiers, like the artists have to do this. We can't live without being paid, And like I said in the live, I basically hired Lauren because I was like, I can't keep this up. I love doing this. But I'm going to burn out, and it's going to ruin my marriage. It's going to ruin my friendships. It's going to ruin my health. I am on edge. My nervous system is suffering. Like, everything is suffering because I have no boundaries around it. But I also don't earn enough money to create boundaries, right? And so she helped me with this, but launching it, I was like, but people might be mad if they can't. And she was like, do you think Netflix is like care? Do you think Netflix, I don't want to be Netflix obviously, but she was like, do you think Netflix cares if everyone, can subscribe to them? They just offer this thing. If you want it, you subscribe. If you don't want it or can't afford it, then you don't, and I was like, oh, because I'm always going to create free content. I'm always going to give things away because it's not free, you know. I make money off of it, but not enough. And I don't want to ever rob people of I don't want to like cut people out. I don't want to like, you know, like the little like anti-capitalist in me is like, but I don't want to do capitalism. And then the part of me that has to like deposit money, rent money is like, but you have to do capitalism on some level. So anyway, the point being, I was so afraid to launch. I was like having like panic attacks, like not real ones, but like, you know, and I was like, okay, you can do it. Remember the wedding? You didn't think anybody would come to the wedding, and the people who could come came, and the people who couldn't didn't, and sent notes and were like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. I'm so touched that you invited me. Like, y'all, I'm telling you, I've done so much healing and I'm in such a great place. But this stuff might never go away. You know, I just have to like deal with that, like those little parts that are like, and just like, I know, but we're just going to do this thing. It's okay. I just try it, right? Do you know it's been 2 days? It's almost 3 days. It's like 2.5 days. I have 113 subscribers, right? Some of them are free. Some of them are paid, but 113 people want to know what I'm doing. And I was like, but what if nobody joins, right? The point is, 200 people came to my wedding, and I didn't want to invite anyone, including my own family, because I was afraid it was like inconvenient. Me, the person who nobody thought would ever get married, including myself. Like, if nothing else, people probably wanted to come be like, I got to see this for myself. There's no way Melanie Hamlin's getting married. And, you know, and they all cried at Anthony's vows. Let me tell you something, though. I went first for my vows because I knew that his would be way better than mine. Like, I'm not like bitter. It's not a competition. But I knew that they would be so touching and he would just say the best stuff. And he did. And they all cried. Look at you. There's a little rotisserie chicken, right? Whoever said that, I love that. The point being, the burden story will keep you from putting things out into the world that maybe people want because of that fear that maybe nobody wants it. Well, maybe some people won't. Maybe a lot of people won't want it. But some people might want it. A lot. I'm not for everybody. You're not for everybody. I don't want everyone to like me anymore. I used to want everyone to like me, and not only is like that not good because that means I'm not being true to myself, that's too much pressure. Like, and if everybody likes me, then that means like I'm even catering, like I don't want red pill dudes to like me. Because if red pill dudes who hate women like me, then I'm doing something wrong. You know what I mean? So that burden story, I know where it comes from. I just forget how strong it is. I forget that it takes over. And if I don't keep her in check, she will sabotage things that are really good for me. She will convince me that, yeah, I almost didn't get those headshots. Y'all saw that, the people who've been here for a while. I was like, no, like, I don't need to do that. Like, I really don't, you know. But if the photographer thinks that I'm too much, you know, and she loved me. We had so much fun. But if people are like, God, why does Melanie have nice photographs? She's just a comedian and a journalist. When all my peers got headshots, as soon as they moved to New York and started doing comedy, you have to have headshots. It took me almost 20 years to get headshots. Look at this bitch. Look at her. Look at this bitch. Look at her. Look at this bitch. Look at her. I mean, just because you're scared and there's resistance doesn't mean it's wrong.